In this video, I'm going to give you the expanded version of the ultimate phrasing exercise, so stick with me. This instrument is by far, in my perception anyway, the most versatile, the instrument where you can influence the sound of each note like on no other instrument. You have more options than, I can't really think of anything parallel to the guitar. But that also, gives us responsibility because suddenly you have choices, right? And when you have choices, you must choose. And what we often do in the beginning is that we say, okay, if I want to play a solo, I must pick the notes, right? I must give, right? I have to pick the notes and I have to fret them over here, right? And then I can do some bending. I can do hammer-ons and pull-offs, but that's more, a matter of playing fast, perhaps, right? But the truth is, the level of complexity that you can go into with regards to how you produce each note is crazy. Like say, just a couple of examples, right? If I have a note, I can just pick it, right? I can hammer it on, right? Which gives me a different kind of attack. I can slide up to it. I can play it with a pinch harmonic. That's an upstroke pinch harmonic. I can give it a downstroke pinch harmonic. Right, and really only get the overtones of the sound. I can hammer it on. I can pull it off. Right? I can do vibrato to it, right? Right, a fast vibrato. Radical vibrato. Right, a subtle vibrato. Right? And I can slide from. Right, I can bend up to it. Right, or bend down from a higher note. Right? So just name it, and I was always also doing some raking here, which increases the attack. Right? Give me that attack. And we got other ways of producing the notes as well. And that's not really the biggest thing, because once we start combining these phrasing techniques, let me combine an upstroke pinch harmonic with a slide and a bend, right? Yeah, I'm sliding from the 5th to the 7th on the G string. That's just a slide. Let me add some upstroke pinch harmonics. Right? Let me then bend the note out. Right? One whole tone. Right? And that is, instead of going right? It's a totally different world once you start using that many phrasing techniques. A really cool player to study is Jeff Beck. And one of the main traits of his playing is that he's using every single way he can of producing a sound that almost becomes the human voice. He uses the trem, almost locks his hand into it very often. He uses his fingers. Then he uses the volume and the tone knob sometimes to influence the sound. And you can do the same thing. But the only thing holding you back is two things. First of all, you must do the ultimate phrasing exercise. And number two, you must not only learn each phrasing technique, and they're not that hard, really, they're not. But then we must also learn to combine them effortlessly. So if you had those steps down, you don't have to be frustrated anymore. You can sound like the best players out there, but you have to use these steps. And the first, you could say, engine of discovery is the ultimate phrasing exercise. And what is that? Well, it is simply a matter of putting on a jam track in the background. And then once you have that jam track, you do not play a note that is not phrased, that you are not pinching, that you're not sliding up to, that you're not bending up to or bending down from or hammering onto or whatever, right? Every single note, you have made that decision because you're a guitar player and you can make that decision. So if you're just picking the note, right, then that's a decision. So make another decision, and that is to influence every single note you play from now on. That's the ultimate phrasing exercise. So if I have like an A minor in the background, I have the first position A minor pentatonic right there. Then I want to play, I want to find a great note, right? I do. Right, 9th fret G string, right? Let me do a rake, and let me hit it from one whole tone below and then slide up to it. And do a little bit of pinch harmonic. So I got rake, I got pinch harmonic, and I got slide. And then some vibrato. Rake, pinch, slide, vibrato. And then I want to take the next 3 notes and make them only slides. Right? And then that sound of the slide where the sound gets weaker and weaker, the momentum falls. That's just, so basically, so I'm gonna wait with the vibrato. So, right? So it's not just all the time, right? So I'm raking, muting all the strings, hitting the note with, right? And then sliding up, vibrato, and then sliding down to the 7th, down to the 5th, and down to the 4th, just if you want. And then some vibrato at the end there. Just the rake, because that's the ultimate phrasing exercise. And when you do that, and if you do it every single day, then you get used to always phrasing, right? Like the Croods, is that a never not be afraid, right? Never not phrase, right? Because I'm not saying you should always, get a maximum amount of phrasing information in your lines, but in order to break out of the amateurish state of not really recognizing the fact that you have a responsibility to choose anyway, right? What you want to do with each note. And that responsibility only comes from just making a choice every single time. Every single note I play is either slit or bent or whatever, right? But then what happens next is that suddenly when I did this the first time, I suddenly realized that I have to do a rake here, because I started really studying people, right? And myself, when I did it right, when I realized, that sounded really good. What am I doing there, right? And this is a rake that has to end in a pinch harmonic. So I not only have to mute the strings, all the strings behind here, the 7th fret, right? I also have to, then that rake has to be a pick stroke, has to become a pick stroke, right? Right? That ends up in me picking the string, and then the string touching lightly my thumb right there. That's the downstroke pinch harmonic, right? Right? This is so delicate, it's crazy. So now I know what to do this weekend. Right? So that's the first thing. And then I need to slide that up without having any of the other strings ring out. Also, I have to mute the strings behind and have a pressure on the G string. And then that influences the sound of the slide, doesn't it? Right? Instead of, right, it says, right? And then the vibrato, which I learned by following a very specific method of using a metronome and controlling the tempo of it and the width of it, because I can do it in a lot of different ways. Right now, right? So introducing the vibrato at just the right point, and then sliding down as I keep the strings muted. On the last there, I'm waiting, and then I'm vibrating again, right? So what is really going on here? What is the phrasing skill really? The phrasing skill is really an orchestration of different parts that has to fit together perfectly, right? It is a dance, different dance moves that follow each other. It is an engine where everything has to occur at just the right time. The piston goes up in the cylinder, and then it compresses the gasoline gas, right? And then a spark appears at just the right moment to explode the gas and then send the piston down again. And that is a complete sha-la-la, right? A complete dance where everything fits together just right. And the dance isn't really a good analogy, because the differences, the pinch and the mute and the it's so small, and the vibrato, how wide, the details are crazy here, right? So no wonder if we're struggling. And the first step to not struggling is to realize what we're dealing with, right? Is to realize, what am I trying to do here, right? So you can learn to bend, right? But that's fine. But then the next moment you have to bend using an upstroke pinch harmonic. Or you have to slide up to the bend, right? And apply all kinds of vibrato and pull off, and then, right? right? A hammer on, and all kinds of little details, and they do not exist in a vacuum. They exist together, and they form a whole together. And that's what's a little bit challenging about this. But once we know what we're dealing with, what are the different elements, and I really urge you to, when you go into phrasing, make sure that you really focus on that. What's going on here, right? What are the elements? And then dissect them, take them out from the whole, practice them by themselves, and then put them together, right? There's nothing more, it looks weird when we're trying to do a dance and we haven't learned the dance moves. That always looks funny, right? I used to, when I was a kid, I went to a breakdance class, right, in the 80s. I told this before, and then I had to learn to do the wave, right? That wavy thing. And how do you teach anybody to do that? Well, you break it up into frames. So you go like this, like that, right? 1 frame, 2 frames, this frame, and then this frame. Up with the shoulder, down with the elbow. Up with the shoulder, down with the elbow. Straighten out the arm, da-da-da-da, right? Out, up, down, right? And these, when you do those, when you do them fluently, then suddenly it becomes a wave, and you can't see the frames anymore, because the movement from frame to frame is the fluent movement. And the same thing goes here, that if you can separate the different frames out, this is the bend, this is the hammer-on, this is the pull-off, this is the micro-bend, this is the vibrato, and let me practice these by themselves, and then put them together. It's so much easier to put them together once you've learned them individually and you master them individually. It's crazy. I've used this method, by the way, to master other things like alternate picking, legato, all kinds of other stuff. Separate the different chord challenges out and then integrate them afterwards. Which is, by the way, what we do in the new course. But you can do that. You can have that focus already when you go into phrasing. But for now, start using the ultimate phrasing exercise every single day. Whatever note you play, make sure you slide up to it, bend up to it, hammer on it to it, pull off to it, right? Do vibrato on it, do a pinch harmonic on it, use vibrato. No note should be played for the next 4 weeks at least that doesn't have some kind of phrasing technique applied to it. If you do that, it becomes a habit. And once that habit is established, you start using the absence of any phrasing technique as a phrasing technique, right? Now it's a choice. Now you want that note to just be... You just want it to ring out, right? Because it's a choice. It's a part of your, what you want to tell people with what you play, right? So every single day, use the ultimate phrasing exercise, put on a jam track and keep focusing on every single note is phrased. Right? Every single note. And then I'll see you in the next video.